I'll do my best to keep it short. We've got some special things happening today. Let me get wired up here. I think I'm on. We've got lots of good food coming, you can tell, and looking forward to hearing more of the Green family. I appreciate those folks a lot coming up and being here with us today. 1 Samuel, back in 1 Samuel, we just looked at some thoughts out of the most popular chapter in 1 Samuel. We saw a young boy whom it said in chapter 17, it said God was with him. Can anybody guess who I'm talking about? God was with this young boy. Shepherd David. Shepherd David. He faced down a giant warrior, it said, with 5 stones and a stick. 5 stones, and one thought on that was standing for perseverance. If he missed one time, he was going to have at it again. And that's kind of the way it is with life. And right here I want to insert just a little thought block that really struck me. It says, self-confidence is such a mantra in our day and age. We're taught, be self-confident, be self-confident. Go to the self-help aisle in the bookstore and learn how to be confident. Guess what? God doesn't want you self-confident. That was a thought for me as I considered that. I can be a little timid at times, draw back a little bit, but God doesn't want us self-confident. He wants you God-confident. And as we look at chapter 17 as a whole, David was God-confident. He went out there before that 9-foot-tall giant, short little stocky fella with that sling and 5 stones, and he said, I come at you in the name of the Lord. I said it last week, I think, and I'll say it again. Church, the world roars. The world roars today. It's one giant that you and I have to face. Will we face it in our confidence or God's confidence? I come at you in the name of the Lord God Almighty. So I'm going to read a few verses here as we cross over into 18. It kind of finishes up sort of powerful, verse 17 does. Look at verse 51. Therefore David ran and stood over the Philistine, took his sword and drew it out of his sheath and killed him. And cut off his head. Who says the Bible is dull and boring anyway? That's a pretty gruesome scene right there. And when the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they ran. Fear struck their heart. Their leader was gone. And then Saul heard of this, and he's impressed. And look at verse 58. It says, whose son are you, young man? As David was brought before him, and David answered, I am the son of your servant Jesse the Bethlehemite. And then we cross over into 18. When he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Saul took him that day and would not let him go home to his father's house anymore. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan took off the robe that was on him and gave it to David with his armor, even to his sword and his bow and his belt. So David went out wherever Saul sent him and behaved wisely, and Saul set him over the men of war, and he was accepted in the sight of all the people and also in the sight of Saul's servants. Now it had happened as they were coming home when David was returning from the slaughter of the Philistine that the women had come out of all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tambourines, with joy, and with musical instruments. So the women sang as they danced and said, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. I would try to put that to music, but I'm not quite sure I could hit the tune that the ladies used there. Then Saul was very angry, and the saying displeased him, and he said, "They have ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they have only ascribed thousands. Now what more can he have but the kingdom?" So Saul eyed David from that day forward, and it happened on the next day that the distressing spirit from God came upon Saul, and he prophesied inside the house. So David played music with his hand, as at other times, but there was a spear in Saul's hand, and Saul cast the spear, for he said, "I will pin David to the wall," but David escaped his presence twice. Now Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but had departed from Saul. Therefore Saul removed him from his presence and made him captain over 1,000, and he went out and came in before the people. And David behaved wisely in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. Therefore when Saul saw that he behaved very wisely, he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David, because he went out and came in before them. I'll stop right there. We've got a lot more chapter to go, but we've got plenty to work on, because this is going to be a short sermon. Okay? Scholars tell us it's a chapter of character. Character. We don't hear much about character today in our society, unfortunately. When's the last time you heard somebody talk about someone's character? Let's define a working definition of character. Qualities or traits that, when combined together, define your nature. Think about yourself. Let's have a moment of self-analysis here. Isn't that scary? When you start thinking about it, it's always the weak points that come up. You know, there was a college class, and the professor said, "Write down all of your weak points," and everybody started scratching. And then he said, "Write down all of your strong points," and the room was silent. We're good at picking out our weak points. I can give you plenty. My family can give you a whole lot more. But we're all good, and those things are part of our character. And that's where God comes in to transform our character, but that's another story for a different day. God has qualities that define his character. God is loving, forgiving, gracious, and kind, and just, and righteous, and merciful, and patient, and beautiful, and glorious. There's good attributes and bad attributes, and guess what? We have a contrast right in our chapter. We have David, we have Saul. And it just struck me, there's a few verses that fascinate me here as we look at this chapter. It's funny, when you read over a chapter, you think, there's nothing there. And then you begin to look at it more closely, and things begin to pop out at you. Look at verse 5. David went out wherever Saul sent him and behaved wisely. That captured my imagination. It's a chapter of character. Do we have any hints of David's character? We're already seeing a couple of little hints there. He behaved how? Wisely. Man, that's a whole thought realm in its own. How do you behave wisely? And if we go a little bit farther, look at verse 14. And David behaved wisely in all his ways. Do you behave wisely in all of your ways? I've got some weak points. But look at the end of that. And the Lord was with him. To show you how my mind works, I got to thinking about that. Which came first? The Lord being with David before he behaved wisely, or was David behaving wisely? See, my mind gets tangled up just thinking about it, but you know where I'm going there. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know. But I think it kind of goes together. The Lord being with you, you walking with the Lord and behaving wisely. So we have some hints. And if it's a contrast, what do we see from Saul here? Look at verse 8. And Saul was very angry. I don't know about you, but when I begin to get angry, it goes downhill pretty fast. You ever notice how quick it goes south when you lose it? It's a spiral, isn't it? He was very angry. And look at verse 9. There's a lot in that little passage. So Saul eyed David from that day forward. What's that bring to mind as he eyed David? Suspicion? Envy? He's wondering, what's he up to? So you see there's a lot going on in Saul's mind already. Verse 10. The next day, the distressing spirit from God. And we know that the Spirit of God had already left Saul and was working in David's life. Now, Saul is on a spiral, folks. He is on a spiral. Verse 12. Now we move to fear. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but had departed from Saul. And then verse 15, Saul saw that he behaved very wisely, and again it brings out this fear. So first of all, this morning I want you to just kind of run that through your computer, this idea of character. Good character, bad character, traits that make up those characters that define you and I. What do you want to be known as? What do you want your character to be known as? And then we go one step forward into the idea of something about character. It says, here's a thought. Character begats character. Run that through your mind. Character begats character. As the scene, go back to verse 1 for a minute now. When he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David. And Jonathan loved him as his own soul. As this intimate scene here of David being before Saul and kind of defining who David is, who his family is, Jonathan's in the background there. He's kind of quietly watching. I want you to remember back a few chapters with me. If you're following along this morning, go back to 1 Samuel 14. Look at verse 6. We have a little drama in Jonathan's life. Remember that? Remember the garrison, Philistine garrison up on the side of the mountain? And Jonathan said to his armor bearer, maybe God will be with us today. Let's go up there and take that out if we can. Verse 6, Jonathan said to the young man who bore his armor, come, let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will work for us, for nothing restrains the Lord from saving by many or by few. Remember our thought? Character begats character. Here's a Curt phrase this morning. Crazy faith. Crazy faith. We got two crazy men here. Jonathan and David. Character begats character. Jonathan's already had his wild adventure. Come on, armor bearer, let's tackle the fort all by ourselves. Let's see what God can do. And he's watched young David eye that 9-foot-tall giant over. And the whole army standing there, and even Saul, listening to him roar day after day. Finally, David can't take it anymore, and he says, I'm going out there and fight. Character begats character. You ever hear the old saying, birds of the feather flock together? I like that. A few weeks ago, here's where I'll give you another blurb about the Green family. A few weeks ago, we were down the festival in West Virginia, and I shared a little bit about it with you. Kind of a different culture than what Brandon and his family is used to. More than once that weekend, I had to contemplate whether I was looking at a boy or a girl. You know, them kinds of crowds. It's like, Zeke, I'm pretty sure you're a boy this morning. Down there, I wasn't so sure what I was looking at all the time, okay? And here we are, but they're on the lawn down there in the midst of all that is the Green family. And I was like, gotta meet them people. We'd already made a commitment on down the way somewhere to play for a little bit, but we caught them that evening, and as I was mulling over all these thoughts, character begats character. And Brandon's the one that gave me the thought. I said, Brandon, in case you haven't noticed it, we're in the minority around here. Remember what his thought was? He said, I've noticed that just a little bit of light goes a long way. That's on the borderline in our society today of being crazy faith. You know? I don't know what your setting is today, but a little bit of light goes a long way. David and Jonathan's crazy. Are you crazy? If I'm going to be called crazy, I might as well be called crazy for the Lord. Let's have a crazy faith as we think about our relation. Jonathan sees David's character and his faith and is drawn to it. That's the life lesson here. And another thought along this is choose friends with godly character. Proverbs 18:24 says there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother. A friend that sticks, and they're thinking that might have been talking about David and Jonathan. Let me throw in a Corinthians passage here that kind of, I know I said I'd keep it short, didn't I? I'm just getting wound up. 1 Corinthians 15, 33 says, do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits. Pretty powerful, isn't it? In other words, I'm going to gear this one toward the younger people here today. Think about this. How many people here today, raise your hand if you are 20 and under. Let's have a show of hands. Malachi, are you 20 yet? No, not 20. Raise your hand if you're 20 and under. This is specifically for you. Are you digest? Choose your friends well. Choose your friends well. This verse is so true. Those of us that are here this morning that have some of this gray stuff in our hair, we can say this passage is so true. Do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits. You can be going along fine in your life and come across a few friends that are kind of, they're into this and they're into that, and they're saying, come on, it won't hurt. It won't hurt to have a little fun. First thing you know, your life is a mess. Your life is a mess. Character begets character. Just a couple more points. We can take it one step farther. Jesus is called Son of David. And when you knit your heart with him, his character becomes your character. Notice Jonathan and David, it says in verse 3, Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul. They become the best of friends. And listen to John 15:15 as we think about this idea of friends and the power of it. John 15:15 reads, no longer, this is Jesus now, do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. Friends. For all things that I heard from my Father, I have made known to you. So as we knit our hearts together, that's a unique choice of word, and as we become close with Jesus, as David become close to Jonathan, his character comes oozing over into our life, this idea of crazy faith. We're to follow in the footsteps of Christ. Last thought, love builds up. Love edifies. Love gives away. Verse 4, Jonathan took off the robe that was on him and gave it to David with his armor, even to his sword and his bow and his belt. Folks, Jonathan was son of the king. You know what that usually meant? He would be king. But he knew David was going to be king. But he took off this robe. There's some significance to that robe. And give it to David, whom he loved. He was willing to step back. Reminds me of John the Baptist. He must become more, I must become less. And this love of his builds up and edifies and gives away. And again, church, we can bring it back to God. God loves you. He wants to build you up and edify your life. And he gave his all on the old rugged cross that we sang about today. So I will stop right there. I will stop right there this morning. We're going to have kind of an abbreviated Sunday school time, I think. However, Jeremiah, you teaching this morning? Whatever time I finish short. I think I finished short. You kind of adjusted at the tail end, okay? You can finish up a little bit short, and then while you're having Sunday school, we're going to begin to kind of set the sound system up. And then after Sunday school, all these smells up here is kind of making me hungry already. After Sunday school, we're going to have a time of fellowship and food, and then we'll have music. Right now, focus on your life, swinging it back to Scripture and the spiritual scene again. Are you walking with Jesus today? We have crazy faith. Let's start small. The Bible says faith as big as a mustard seed. We just went from huge faith to small faith. Let's swing it small. Maybe you're just grappling with the idea of faith. Is Jesus who he said he was? Is there a God? Maybe you're asking questions like that. It takes itty-bitty little faith to accept the idea there is a God. There is a man, there was a man named Jesus who walked the earth, who died. There was a resurrection, and he's alive today. If you're grappling with those questions, if you've decided in your mind to start on this adventure of faith, come forward during the invitation. Or if you just want to talk about it, find me after church. Or find somebody that you trust that's walking with you. Brother Paul, time of invitation.